Welcome to the Grappling With podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management. Our mission is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with. Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
You're very tropical today.
For fast, effective relief.
Oh, I thought it was a can of whoop-ass. I didn't know what it was.
No, it wasn't. I already opened that up on you.
You did, actually, on Saturday.
I had the best round of my life, and I'm going to remind you about it.
You beat up an old man, and you were very pleased with it.
You know, sometimes old men, they chirp up a little bit.
Yeah.
They get a good wedgie in front of everybody.
It might come back around.
It will. That's why I'm basking in it right now.
Oh, you should be. I would be doing the same thing. You have a Kyle-inspired Hawaiian shirt.
You know, ever since our testosterone levels went up a little bit by having Mr. Kyle Hiller in here, it was like, this must happen. I need to change my wardrobe, number one. Number two, it's almost like my testosterone levels skyrocketed because he gave me this shirt.
Yeah.
This is a gift here. Read it and weep, people. Notice he's not wearing one.
Yeah. I also didn't get a gi from your other friend.
That was secret, and you weren't supposed to say anything.
I didn't say. We just talked about getting. I didn't say anything about it. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious that, yes, you might be the talent, but someone's the favorite. Someone's Luke Perry here.
There's for sure.
I'm Luke Perry.
Well, you're going to end up the same way, too.
Okay. Shot across the bow. I am Beyonce.
Oh, my gosh.
What are we doing?
We are, Kyle brought up something on the podcast that you said, hey, we should go revisit that, the whole rhabdomyolysis thing. Mm-hmm. And so I am.
It's funny you're wearing a Rogue Fitness shirt because the only time I've ever heard of rhabdo is in the CrossFit community.
Yep. Absolutely.
Is that on purpose?
What?
The Rogue shirt?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a lot of creativity in my wardrobe.
It was the only one that was already shrunk down.
Here we go again.
No, it's a rash guard.
It's a large.
So in how I've heard of it, is at first it's just how CrossFit athletes get hurt. that was how I was exposed to it. I found out there's other things that come into play. It's not even necessarily the athletes that are getting crushed by this, but typically it's the hobbyist that's just starting.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I'm not picking on CrossFit. It's just because CrossFit is known for kind of pretty intense workouts, a lot of repetitions. Of course, it depends on how you program it. CrossFit's a tool like anything else, right? I mean,
we have a fly.
We're not just swatting at each other.
We're cat fighting.
Yeah.
If I catch this on camera,
I
don't know.
In chopsticks, you'll get something.
I get something.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, CrossFit, again, is a tool. It can be used effectively. It can be abused, especially by a trainer that doesn't know what they're doing. It's not really good at looking at, who they're training, right?
Yeah, they don't typically. I mean, I guess it's similar to jiu-jitsu, but they not all. Some schools might, some schools don't, but they don't have an intro program a lot of the time.
Yeah, and the good ones do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really important to scale things. Just like it's same carryover to jiu-jitsu. You could have someone come in first day and just give them a terrible experience, right?
Yeah.
Or a really good one. So you kind of hit a couple things that are important on that that we'll talk about on, kind of who's at risk.
And just to reference back with Kyle, what was he saying how they've experienced this rhabdo issue?
Same kind of issue.
But with subduing someone.
That and themselves, as far as training, when they're, you have someone coming going through training the first time, like in the academy, and let's say they've been sedentary, they haven't really ramped up for it. All of a sudden they're doing more exercise than they thought. Right. I was really going to concentrate on, since it's better for our audience, the exercise-induced rhabdomyolysis, which there are other causes too. Just to be clear about that. But what is it, I guess? People call it rhabdo. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
It's basically 3 words put together in one medical word, rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdo means striated, myo meaning muscle, lysis meaning breakdown. So striated muscle is like skeletal muscle. We call it striated under the microscope. The histology, that's the study of histology, is how tissues look under a microscope. And muscle from skeletal muscle, like the kind we use in action, has this striated type of look to it, as far as its morphology or how it looks. And so rhabdomyolysis literally means striated muscle breakdown. Okay, so that's what that means. So it usually happens to people, and what I've seen in the military, we've seen a lot of it, like when recruits come in. So they sign up for the military, they go to boot camp, and especially I bet you it's a real problem right now. I'm making a generalization about an upcoming generation right now that they haven't been as physically active. Okay. And some of them are significantly overweight and have some metabolic problems. Just as an aside, I saw a recent article that they said 77 of new recruits in the military have to have a waiver of some kind.
What is that waiver?
For various things, mental health, physical condition. Yeah. So it's hard to find people anymore. But anyway, so when you get someone that hasn't really been doing a lot, and all of a sudden you put them into a very intense environment, as far as exercise, that's when you're at most risk. So let's go to the grappling community. Let's say you have a white belt come in, brand new, wants to start this, and really doesn't have an athletic background. The people that come in with that athletic background that have a general level of fitness don't really have as much of a problem with this. It's a lack of adaptation, and just like you're crushing someone. The CrossFit always comes up because it's the person that comes in for their first CrossFit class and they're like, oh, we're going to do 300 box jumps, right?
Yeah.
And, hundreds of sit-ups or whatever, and puts them through a circuit. So you're exceeding the metabolic capability of the muscle. And if you remember from our previous episodes, we have an energy currency in the body called ATP. We talked about this during the creatine podcast, where ATP is our energy carrier, and when you pop one of those phosphates off, it releases energy that powers our systems. Well, in the muscle, a couple key things happens as far as, that is important with rhabdo. The cell membranes of muscle, of any cell, and muscle included, have to have sodium and potassium in various concentrations in or out of the cell. And those concentrations, I'm not going to get into it because people would just turn this off really quickly. But the bottom line is you have to have a pump that pumps sodium one way and potassium the other against the concentration gradient. What does that mean? If I had a hose attached to a pool full of water, and I was trying to pump more water into that pool when I don't have a lot of water outside the pool. In other words, there's a lot less water out than there is in. I'm pumping water in to a place that already has a lot of water. The same thing you can think of like with sodium. I'm pumping sodium out into a condition that already has a lot of sodium. Left to its own devices, it would flow from greatest concentration to least concentration. Does that make sense? To power that, we need ATP, those pumps. And when you do and before I get into it more, inside the muscle cell, there are these little compartments that hold calcium. When a muscle contracts, that calcium is released inside the cell, and it actually helps. It it actually stimulates contraction of all those contractile things we have in our actin and myosin, all the things we have inside our muscle cells. But that's very tightly regulated. It's always kept in that compartment at rest. And when we contract a muscle, it's released, it does its thing, and then it's pumped back into that compartment. Otherwise, we'd be in this contraction the entire time.
Okay.
Perfect example of what happens when you lose ATP is when someone dies. You ever seen them get stiff, that rigor mortis?
Yeah.
Right? That's what that is.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I'm sure you're like, when I leave them mad every time.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that's what that is. It's a lack of energy, and then you have, those pumps are unable to work, and then you get this sustained muscular contraction is what rigor mortis is. And then that eventually goes away over time as everything dissipates when someone dies. But anyway, when we're exercising to a point where the demands of the exercise exceed our body's ability to produce ATP, through burning glucose or fat or whatever, however we're producing it, then we start to get a dysregulation of those pumps. They don't have enough ATP to kind of partition the sodium, potassium, and calcium where they're supposed to be, and that starts damaging the muscle cell. That's not the only thing that does it. You can have a crush injury or something like that, an actual physical force that damages the muscle. But in this case, for what we call exertional rhabdo, once that muscle cell is disrupted, the membrane, you get stuff spilling out. I mean, the cell dies, and you get stuff spilling out into the bloodstream. And that's what we measure, and we'll talk about some of the things we look for as doctors when we suspect someone has rhabdo. But anyway.
How common is...
Yeah.
Is it fairly common?
It's not rare, and it's not like it's fairly common. When I say common, it does happen with some regularity. Like I said, in those things where someone has just started like a military boot camp and hasn't exercised enough, someone comes into a first CrossFit workout and doesn't have a coach, it's like, hey, we need to kind of ramp you up into this stuff before we do it.
Would it be, and not to sidetrack you too much,
you're right.
Would you have to, this isn't like 100% of the time, but would you have to be doing some sort of weight training to get it?
Yeah, not always. Okay. No. You see this in like someone that says, hey, I want to run a marathon, right? Which isn't weight training, but we'll talk about what kind of muscular contractions actually predispose people to. It's the repetition. It's just exceeding whatever demand it is. That's a really good question, actually, because you do hear it more often with people associated with weightlifting or something like that. Usually a novice trainee that just goes in there and says, more is better. I'm just going to crush myself, or has someone, come on, bro, give me more reps.
For sure.
Did you have a question, Olivia?
Yeah. So, because you're saying it's running out of ATP, right? Or
for exertional. Yep.
So, like when we're doing jiu-jitsu and you start getting that shake, is that a sign of loss of ATP, or is that a symptom that someone might experience, or?
That is a danger sign where your nervous system is the point like, hey, you probably need to refeed me a little bit, give me a little bit more rest, because you're pushing that envelope. And once you start pushing, and I'm going to talk about some of the other factors that can kind of make it a little worse, such as high temperatures, relative dehydration, alcohol use the night before, stuff like that. You hear people, hey, come in. Yeah. We know a couple folks.
Aging black belts.
They come in like, hey, excuse me. But, but there's some other factors involved as well, too. Where was I going with this?
We just interjected, but you were still talking about kind of the chemical level.
Yeah, well, I think, the bottom line is it's really a lack of ATP, which we don't have to go for exertional rhabdo. And you asked the question, is it just weightlifting? That's where we were.
Like, does there have to be that element of some sort of strength exertion. Not, and you answered it with, I mean, even marathon runners, jiu-jitsu people could run into it.
Absolutely.
I mean, couldn't it technically then be like any overexertion? Like, let's say you're sedentary and you have to move, and now you're moving all these boxes all day long. Could that do that?
Yep.
Okay.
That simple?
Yep. Because let's say I've never done that before. Usually I'm a couch potato, and now all of a sudden I have to move. That's
a lot of work.
Yeah, it is, and it may very well exceed your muscular capacity.
Interesting.
The negative part of the muscle contraction, what we call the eccentric, seems to be the most predisposes the most. So if you were we see the box jumps all the time, right? They get people. It's not really jumping on the box, we don't think. It's jumping down in that landing. And it's same with running, where we're slapping our feet down. We have that deceleration phase of the eccentric contraction of that just repetitive. Because, there's a braking component in that too, in any of these long repetitive movements. In those repetitive movements, especially because you're working the same muscle group over and over and over and over, right? As opposed to something more, where, hey, maybe I ran a mile and then I did some swimming, right? Where we're mixing things up a little bit. That doesn't seem to be as bad.
And I guess that's why in jiu-jitsu it might be a little more rare, just because you're spreading it out through a roll is
correct.
Your arms, your legs, your back, your hips, your core, your front core, your back core, the Marine Corps.
Unless you have a psychopath running warm-ups that is just like, we're going to do, 1,000 crunches.
Right.
Do you know, so it would have to be something like that.
For sure.
Or I lifted really heavy. I did squats to failure the night before.
What about the same day?
Well, or the same day, especially. And then I had a little alcohol before I went. You know what I mean? Some of those if you come into it already a little compromised, I think it's a little easier to do during your grappling session. Okay. Right? Because that's important. You go, and of course, then with us, especially, the dehydration comes into place with lots of sweating, especially if the gym's real hot. So that can kind of lead to it as well. But I wouldn't think, I would say that MMA fighters for sure, because you have actually some crushing injury. Like if you get leg kicked, you actually have some trauma to the muscle that's more trauma induced, what's called a crush injury, that can absolutely lead to rhabdo as well too. Okay, but I thought we'd more talk about exertional rhabdo for us. So for our population, it would be people that think training more is always better, and they're doing and I'm not trying to pick on CrossFit, but this is what I see. I'm doing CrossFit 3 times a week, then I'm training 3 or 4 times a week in jiu-jitsu. My sleep's not that good, and I like to drink before I eat. I don't really take care of my hydration. Those are the people I think would be, to pay attention to. So, but we're not at super high risk. I guess. But it is the reason why I'm even doing this today is because the consequences of if you do get it, you can die from it. And so I want to talk about that a bit. How would what are the symptoms, right? Yeah. Because we're going to talk about some of the blood tests we do as doctors, but before you even get there, if you just to make you suspicious, the triad, so to speak, the classic 3 signs of it are extreme muscle soreness, usually more than you would even think. You could barely touch the muscle. Have you ever had that before where you're...
I think I have. I mean, so when you say touch it,
even pressure on it hurts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that.
And this isn't always. I mean, people can have it without this, but this is the classic. Okay.
I would say actually somewhat recently when I decided to start strength training, and I went a little too hard on the old chest workout. I didn't even use weights. I was just doing free weight.
Yep.
Body weight stuff.
Yep.
Push-ups and different kinds.
But how often had you done that before?
I mean, I haven't done a strength training thing in
that's what I'm saying.
A long time.
And this is where you would be at more risk.
Yeah. And it was I don't think I sparred the next day. I was just...
It was really tender.
It was really tender.
Exactly. And that's one of the.
So that's one.
One. Two is weakness. You actually feel like you can't generate a lot of force with that muscle group. And the third is what they call tea-colored urine or Coca-Cola, whatever, the same kind of that darkish, not like this amber-colored urine. It's like a brownish, reddish looking thing.
Do you have to have all three?
Nope.
Just one of those can.
And I'll tell you, and that's what gets people because the percentages are of, I think, if I remember the stats on it, I think it's as low as, between 10 and 20% of all rhabdo cases have all three. 80 to 90 won't have all three, and that's the danger of it.
So the urine thing, that's not only caused by rhabdo, or is that?
That's a classic. I mean, there can be discolored urine from different medications. We see that, but that's a classic sign.
So I asked because I remember it was a Mayweather 24/7, where they follow the fighters, and it was, and Mayweather was, he was training like crazy, and he took a leak. I think he was doing it for like drug test, so he had it in a cup.
Yep. And
it looked like Coca-Cola.
So
he called it gorilla piss.
And that is not good because, especially with a combat athlete. Okay.
Yeah. But it was more of a sign of, I remember a lot of people talking about it as a sign, like a positive thing. And that.
What?
Yeah. That like people were like, yeah, he's working hard and his body's getting all the negative chemicals.
That's a bunch of bullshit.
You call me a bro?
I'm calling that whoever said that statement.
I said it.
Well, you're just relaying. I was trying to work with you, dude. I was just saying you're just relaying the information.
I did say it.
I didn't think you did.
Say it. I wonder if he went Machida. You think he would, if he was like Machida and drank his first urine of the day? Oh. You pee out that dark ass stuff. You think he's drinking it? No. I don't think so.
No.
I think he's like, maybe I'll do the second one.
Well, what is that? And so, to your point, though, that could be the only symptom.
Oof. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that the whole muscle soreness, weakness thing isn't always as apparent.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a real problem. So the Coca-Cola or tea color, whatever you want to call it, that kind of urine is indicative of something in that urine that should not be there. Okay. And that's called myoglobin. So you heard of hemoglobin. We talked about hemoglobin, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So hemoglobin is the thing that carries oxygen around in the red blood cells, kind of delivers oxygen to your tissues. As blood goes through the lungs and gets oxygenated, hemoglobin is the thing that carries it. Myoglobin stays in the muscle, is actually a repository of oxygen. It's very similar to hemoglobin. It's an oxygen carrying thing. It's not quite as big, but it's inside the muscle. So when that muscle ruptures, that myoglobin spills out into the bloodstream, and the kidney tries to filter it. And this is where you can get in trouble and actually die from acute kidney failure because that myoglobin is toxic to the kidneys at high levels. It can cause what's called acute tubular necrosis. You don't have to know all this stuff, but and a whole cascade of biochemical and physiologic events that causes the kidneys to fail. And people, that's what kills people. So it's big. So when you're seeing the Coca-Cola, that's the myoglobin stuff being filtered out.
Is that the worst symptom?
Yep. Yep.
Like that's the most alarming one.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely, because you've already started filtering that stuff out.
Let's say you don't work out very hard when you do work out, or you don't work out at all, and you pee that.
You need to get checked out.
Okay. No matter what.
No, because you need. If you're not. If your exertional, if that activity is not such that you think it should have done that, there are other causes of rhabdo, drug induced. One of the it's rare, but one of the popular drugs for lowering cholesterol, statins. It can cause rhabdo. There's a bunch of psychiatric medications that can cause rhabdo.
And if you're okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
So there's other causes for it, and so that's a bad thing. And if you there's certain genetic disorders.
What if your pee's kind of greenish?
That's a little. I don't know. I'd kind of look into that. You need
too much B12.
B12 usually gives you a super yellow, orangey looking thing.
Orangey.
Yeah, like a bright, like a neon yellow. Okay. The B vitamins typically do. Okay. But if it's looking dark, any kind of brownish, reddish tint to it, you need to get. I'd get looked at.
I would find that alarming. I would find that very alarming.
You'd be surprised. Well, that's because you're a smart person.
I would think blood. That would be like, is this like...
Which would also be alarming.
Exactly.
It means you have an infection or something.
One of the board questions, when we do our medical boards, is they give us case studies, right? Mm-hmm. And, the classic, this person went and ran a marathon, came in talking about muscle pain, and you do a urinalysis on them. What's interesting is when you do those urinalysis, it's a little test strip. They take some of your urine and dip it in there. And it has a variety of little indicators on it, one for glucose, protein, blood. So with rhabdo, blood comes up positive, but it's not blood. Because it's cross-reacting, the myoglobin is triggering the marker for blood. But when you look under the microscope at the urine, there are no red blood cells. Okay, so that's kind of the classic rhabdo case study from medical school. But anyway, that is something you cannot take lightly.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, that looks a little weird. And they just kind of go on with their day.
Yeah.
A lot of young people it depends on how bad it is and how much myoglobin is in there for your kidneys to be able to spill, to filter. But the first treatment is hydration. They'll put you a large bore IV in and just hydrate the crap out of you. There's some other talk about alkalizing the urine that's been done in the past. There's adding like bicarbonate to it to help the kidneys a little bit, but I don't think that's really been proven to be definitively. But the big thing is hydration.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to backtrack a little bit because I just thought of something. Another thing is, you think about this exertional rhabdo as an ATP crisis, so to speak. In other words, an energy crisis. It's also those people that want to come in and like, hey, I want to do a hard roll fasted. Right? We don't have the adequate nutrients and to power and form the ATP, because we need to make ATP somehow. Yeah. That is also something that goes in the old pot as a potential risk factor. So especially you're going to do really hard,
In the morning class, I do get some students that will tell me that they're there fasted.
Well, it depends on how hard. If you want to just go there and, kind of do some drilling or kind of light work, you'll probably get away with it just fine. It's usually a multifactorial. It's usually like, the perfect storm usually. Like, they aren't really up on their hydration. They fasted, right? Maybe they had a little alcohol before. Maybe they did, heavy deadlifts, right? And then they're going to come in and train fasted. It's kind of a recipe for a problem, especially with the folks that are kind of newer.
Sure.
Right? Someone that's been training for a long time has been adapted pretty well. Because you don't see experienced weightlifters, you very rarely see rhabdo. Okay, because they've adapted to what they've been doing. So back to the myoglobin thing. So if you see, that kind of Coca-Cola colored urine, don't blow that off. Okay. That's really important to kind of get evaluated. You can go to urgent care. They can work that up and they can shoot you through, a bunch of IVs and stuff. Yeah. But there are I've seen, when I was an intern at Naval Medical Center Portsmouth, it was almost weekly. We'd have a Marine or someone in the ICU in kidney failure. We had to put them on dialysis temporarily because their kidneys weren't working. Dang. Yeah, so it can be and then you can get secondary infections. It's a nasty, nasty thing. So the other from a medical perspective, the other thing we look for in the bloodstream is called creatine kinase, which you probably remember from our creatine lecture. That's the thing that So creatine is what we take in, right? It's in the muscle. Remember that little rapid cycling thing I talked about that doesn't need glucose or anything else for the first 10 seconds? It's why creatine works, to give you that extra rep. Okay. Because that creatine gets a phosphate put on it, and that phosphate can be used for energy in a real quick fashion. But where was I going with that? I was just going to say that the creatine kinase. Right. I was like, where was I going with that? Creatine kinase is the enzyme that makes that happen in the muscle, and so one of the other markers is when that muscle cell breaks. That's another thing. Instead of also the myoglobin, the creatine kinase spills out into the blood,
gotcha. And
we measure that, and we're like, usually we consider rhabdo if it's 5 times higher than normal or more, and most often it's a lot more.
Can a mild quote-unquote case of rhabdo, that's possible, right? It's not just 100, right?
No, for sure. And that's a really good point, because if I, like the workout I did today even, I did some strength training and some squats, I guarantee you if I went and did my blood right now, my creatine kinase is elevated. That doesn't mean I have rhabdo. Part of the muscle, because strength training is muscle damage too. You will get some spill out of that, but it's the amount that's important. You're right; it's on a continuum. Okay, but you won't see with a regular workout session that Coca-Cola or tea-colored urine.
When it comes to, so we talked about the Coca-Cola colored urine, but the other two was muscle weakness and soreness.
Extreme soreness.
At what point, like how many days is too long for you to be sore or weak? Because sometimes, I can, if I do a really tough workout or when I first started, my muscles, it hurts to sit down, sort of a thing. But then usually within 2 or 3 days, it starts to get better. How long is too long?
There's no good, because you can have that kind of post-exercise muscle soreness, the delayed onset muscle soreness, for a while. I've had, when I was stupid and did some really dumb, I was sore for like 4 or 5 days. But I was checking my urine too. That's the biggest thing, because you're right. You can have pretty bad muscle soreness and weakness, but that's not always.
If it was more, let's say, actual rhabdo muscle soreness, and it's so severe that it would stick around for a little bit. Typically, what does the urine color follow?
Oh yeah.
So it's you can only have one and have rhabdo, but the muscle soreness, if it's really bad, like even to the touch.
Yeah, that's a bad sign if you're like just touching your arm and
I think
it hurts.
Usually when you do a workout and you're
like when you move, it hurts, right?
Yeah, it moves. And there's stiffness there, but not actual like.
Yeah,
you're touching.
If I'm where you're like, out of proportion to what you think it should be, that's when I'd be highly suspicious. I check it anyway. I'm always looking at the color of my urine.
And a lot of the time, your
so not just like sore, but like really like painful.
But again, there are people that don't really have much muscle soreness for whatever reason, and and so. I think the urine, to me, is the biggest warning sign. I mean, if I, as a clinician, if someone came to me, hey, like if you came to me and like, I am super sore, I can't even touch anything, we'd be looking, we're like, okay, I want you to go, actually, not just pee in the toilet, let's look at it.
Yeah.
Because you will, again, in any kind of exercise that produces that kind of soreness, you will get some myoglobin and creatine kinase just from the muscle damage, right? It's just the amount. And it's hard to tell. And that's why I'm having this, that's why we're doing this, because of it's fairly rare, but the consequences are pretty bad. So
you said you can die from this.
You can.
And going back to the 0 to 100 thing. So I'm a stereotypical dude. Not big on going to the doctor, even if I enjoy them. If I have some signs, maybe urine's a little darker, like almost like it's not quite Coca-Cola, but it seems like it might be a little off shade. I do have soreness, even if I'm not, super physically fit or something, like, people that are just getting into working out, or they had a tough, like they moved apartments or something. How quickly can it go from mild case, let's say that's fairly mild case, because some of the symptoms seem fairly mild, to, oh geez, like this is deadly?
Yeah, like probably 36 to 48 hours.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, because then you'll reach the capacity of the kidneys.
Just by not treating it?
Yep.
It can just, it'll elevate itself?
Well, it depends on the state of the rest of your body too, right? So any alcohol on board, relative dehydration.
Yeah, you just moved. You're going to drink some beers.
Well, that's what I'm saying, So all these things are, but I saw the one that stuck in my head as an intern, it was just, he did I can't remember what it was. Half marathon, I forgot what it was. Where he's like, I'm a Marine. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna, I haven't done that in a while, but I'm gonna do it. And it was 2 days after where he was in the ICU.
Yep.
Is there a peak point that it reaches with the breakdown?
Yep, sure does. We follow it. As a matter of fact, it's when they're in the hospital, we follow creatine kinase. We follow creatine kinase because it's a surrogate. Myoglobin is harder to assay for technically, and you can do it. But creatine kinase is such an easy thing to do in the lab.
Is it assay for?
An assay means a test. We'll watch that curve and we'll watch it. We'll make sure it's decreasing. Okay, after as we're doing that, and we're hydrating the crap out of these people. Not just with water, with the electrolyte is super important too.
What's that IV concoction called that has like vitamin C in it? Mm-hmm. It's like something. It's called something.
Yeah, well, it has a bunch of stuff.
Isn't there like
it's a
street name?
Myers cocktail.
Yes, I was trying to remember that.
So that's more of a wellness type of thing, just kind of top you up on things like, in that there's a bunch of stuff in there.
So it wouldn't necessarily be that, but
no, you're talking about high level of saline, basically. Yeah. Some people add some glucose in there too, but we're really wanting to hydrate that. Because a lot of times what happens also is with all that inflammation and damage in the muscle actually sequesters fluid inside of it. You actually get swelling of it, and that takes it out of the bloodstream too. So you get what we call hypovolemic, or just down on fluid. So it's really, the biggest thing with rhabdo is hydration.
So basically not basically, but if you do notice that color or of urine, besides heading to urgent care, should you immediately start drinking electrolytes and getting those in to start to kind of combat that?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is taking in some glucose, is that like...
It's not going to hurt. Yep.
Some sugar.
Yep.
Some obviously more like fruit or something like that.
Yeah. The biggest thing though is to get the hydration going.
So what are you dying of? Is it dehydration?
Nope, you're dying of your kidneys failing. So your kidneys are super important in their ability to, the liver will transform things like, alcohol. That's what causes hangovers, is the byproducts of the liver detoxifying things. The kidney gets rid of everything. So for instance, just protein degradation, what we call urea, which is a nitrogen compound. So when the kidneys stop working and doing their job, you get acid-base balance problems because the kidney works helps keep your blood in the correct pHs. You start getting buildup of nitrogen compounds. You start having a lot of things when the kidney's not doing its job. And that's why diabetics that have been diabetic for a long time that have kidney failure, they have to go have artificial kidneys work for them to keep them alive, which is dialysis. Right. So your things that will start building up in the bloodstream because the kidneys aren't working, that aren't supposed to build up in the bloodstream. And that's what kills you.
So let's say you don't get to death, but if you get rhabdo, you were a little lazy about treating it, or maybe you weren't, maybe you did treat it. Is there residual or lasting damage?
It depends on who you were and your state of health coming into it.
Superman.
If you're now, younger people that are pretty healthy can recover that kidney function pretty quickly. It depends on the degree of damage that happens, right? But they usually can recover that fairly quickly. But if you already have some other issues going on, that can be a real problem. You can, the kidneys don't, everything has its own resilience and reserve capacity, right? Depends on what the state of that organ system was before.
So so you can definitely have some lasting injuries
for sure
from it.
Yeah,
especially if it was a bad case.
Yeah, a real bad case. I mean, I've seen some really terrible things happen. I mean, because then you start, when the kidneys aren't working and they're not filtering out things, you get toxic levels in your bloodstream. You can have all kinds of neurologic problems from that, all kinds of things. I mean, I don't want to go into the whole textbook of,
sure.
but absolutely. I mean, that's what kills people is the kidney failure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or it gets you in the hospital or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And when you're in the ICU with rhabdo, with acute, we call it renal failure, kidney failure, a high percentage of those people die.
Dang.
Yeah. So it's because of the complications from the kidney failure. It's not a good thing. So anyway, but that's just, this is like a public service announcement, basically, just so people can, so jiu-jitsu alone, probably you're going to be okay. But, this would also be for coaches. Let's say you have someone come in, you're like, you can tell when someone's doesn't have a high fitness level. You really want to ease them into it a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Because, jiu-jitsu also, depending on what they're doing, if you're doing a bunch of repetitive takedowns, and you can still get some muscle damage from that too. And in high exertion, it could be a perfect storm. They're coming in, they don't have good nutrition. It's hot gym. They're dehydrated a little bit. This is their first class, and they get actually, or the day before they were like, oh, I got to get in shape, and they did, 500 push-ups. Or
sure.
You never know who you're dealing with. So just, it's always good to have a new person. Just, kind of do a good coach's eye there, and just be aware that this is a thing. Yeah, I guess
that's like the big thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's really all. There's not too much more to.
So how the person when Kyle was talking about people getting that, and also excited delirium, right? Is that what it was called?
Yeah. It's not my area of expertise, and that work, but that's usually a central nervous system problem where you're getting so much norepinephrine, or the flight or fight response. Yeah, that's
mixed with some sort of drug concoction.
For sure.
That's what causes that.
Yeah, and the crushing thing of the, even being like, we've seen this in people, the older people with just bed rest for a long time. Just the pressure over time and being super sedentary, they can actually get rhabdo, and it's usually in concoction with some other drug they're taking. Yeah, it's usually not just one thing that does it. Right. Yeah. So a super healthy person that gets arrested and kind of subdued or whatever you want to call it, typically isn't going to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I feel like the overall message is don't chase soreness. And pace yourself. If you haven't worked out in a while,
build up to it.
Yeah, take it slow. It's better to do less than more.
That's right.
You're not going to get in shape in one day.
No, you want to give your body a time to adapt, and we've talked about that so many. It's the whole allostatic load thing. It's exactly what it is. The stress cup.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
That's the way to fill it up.
You need to build yours. A person just starting will build up their resiliency over time.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions on that?
Not on this, but I did have some.
All right. That's what I'm talking about.
Why don't you go ahead and start it? I got a couple from people. But go ahead.
So actually, me and Bill were talking about this today on our way home from the grocery store. And, question about joints and why they get bigger from jiu-jitsu, but also Bill was talking about how he thinks people who do jiu-jitsu have stronger jaws. So I'm just curious.
What I mean is it seems like people that have been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, I don't even know for the most part, but it seems typical that they have strong jawlines. It just seems like they have a healthier, better looking Captain America jaw.
You think it's muscular development from clamping down on the mouthpiece?
I think so. I think it's a theory.
Okay,
right? Would be one, they just by now we're saying someone that's been training a long time, right? So they're just healthier. They probably practice some sort of breathing techniques through their nose. So they do the mooing kind of thing, where you're pushing your tongue to the top of the rooftop of your mouth, which naturally kind of helps with your dentistry.
You get a little palate expansion from that,
It could help with that. The kind of like cauliflower ear, the grinding of the jaw, calcifying, maybe actually making it a little larger.
I don't know about that.
This is just theory. I'm ready to be proven wrong.
I don't.
But all these things, maybe more than average testosterone development by someone that trains actively for many years. That was with the jaw that I was thinking.
The knuckles, we don't know.
The knuckles, like how our knuckles tend to, I can't put my ring on anymore.
Well, that has to do with inflammation and fluid retention.
It's fluid?
Yeah, both. Yeah, inflammation causes part of the inflammatory process. You get, that's what swelling is.
These guys?
Yeah, that is
like calluses, aren't they?
That is an inflammatory thing you got going on there.
Can that go down?
It can. But over time, it can become permanent where you have such an arthritic joint.
Yeah. Because it's like you touch that thing.
I know. It's
like rough.
What I've noticed when I see mine do that, and since I play guitar, I'm very conscious of, especially my left hand, because I don't want to lose any kind of mobility. So that's an I'll get back to the jaw thing in a minute.
My fingers aren't even bad. I'm not saying I got bad.
No, but I've seen people that do lots and lots of lapel type of work, or they hold on to it, and with all those frequent grip breaks and stuff. That absolutely will inflame the joints. Plus, we end up getting, if you think about it, it's almost like if I did all bicep curls and zero tricep. We'd have an imbalance in the joint on the elbow.
People made that comment about you, though, right?
What?
About like you got good guns, but like it doesn't seem. Do you ever work your triceps?
No, my triceps. I do work my triceps.
You haven't got that comment?
The comment I've gotten from Andrew is that they were large.
You and Andrew's personal life can stay with this podcast.
Why not? We should just air it out. Yeah. Whatever.
It's a good month to do it.
Yeah. It is. Very, very funny. It's pretty good.
Okay. So like this.
My point is, if we're doing all this gripping, right? Flexing at this joint, developing all this musculature here, but we're not doing the counter development with opening up the hand near as much.
Yeah.
You can get the thing that makes joints, first of all, lack of muscular development around a joint where the joint's being hung on all the time, or imbalances around the joint where you have like one group of muscle, let's say your flexors, are well developed and your extensors are very poorly developed. We could talk about knees or whatever, or any other joint. Especially, it's more, because there's not a lot of room here in your finger, this a little small area, you can see these things very readily, as opposed to a knee, right?
Okay.
And so what I've started doing is using those rubber band. You can buy them on Amazon too, but you can take a rubber band and kind of open up and start working the extensors a little bit.
Yeah.
And really, but that is an inflammatory thing that short term, they'll look all big and knobby.
Yeah.
But long term, you can actually get, joint degeneration, osteoarthritis, to the point where you have all these extra little bone pieces called osteophytes growing all over your joint. And not only are they looking large and knobby, but they're very, very hard to move too.
Oh, dang. Okay.
So I would encourage people to try to balance their joints out as much as possible.
Yeah.
Something that's Carrie takes like some curcumin and fish oil and stuff like that. It's general anti-inflammatory. You can, ice your hands and stuff like that too.
Okay.
Around the joint. But it's a real problem with jiu-jitsu.
Why don't you try disproving my jaw theory?
Well, so to have actual increase density of the actual jaw bone, there'd have to be some kind of force to cause that.
Like passing? No.
Like what?
Like it passing? Like getting someone's head is like pressing up on your jaw. You're getting past that?
Not so much. I wouldn't think.
No?
Now, if you were like in a strongman competition, those people that pull things with their teeth, really work in the jaw.
Clinching
could certainly, it could.
Clinch with their jaw.
It could.
You're not beating anything yet.
I would say it has probably more to do with body composition than anything, where they don't have as much fat deposits around their neck.
Well, like Andrew has a big ass jaw.
Some of it's genetic too.
He's got a Jay Leno jaw.
Yeah.
And then Mo.
Yeah. Well, some people. You look at people with they have big heads in general.
I didn't say that.
I'm just saying, but it's a thing. You look at
Mo has a big head.
I've told him that to his face several times.
You're all balls, my friend.
But that's why guys like that tend to be more resilient in you look at UFC fighters, the ones that are more resilient to being kind of hit in the head or have larger head and jaw structures.
Well, I saw this theory came from something I saw on Twitter where there was picture. It was
a good place.
A bunch of school yearbook photos of old country, like dudes, like in Iowa or something like that. Like senior year of high school, and all of them got just these corn-fed big jaws, it was like from the 50s or something. And then you look at like today's, and they look like Bert and Ernie.
There's a nutritional component in that in utero, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's more so what they were saying.
Well, absolutely, jaw development, especially the Weston A. Price book is really interesting, where he was a dentist that went around the world. I've talked about him before and looked at different areas of the world and their dentition and their jaw structures. It's really interesting how that nutrition piece, and we've kept kids away from more, they don't use their jaws as much as they used to. These baby food and stuff like that.
Everything's kind of liquid or pudding or something like that.
So that's part of that development thing. Mine's a perfect example. I have the same problems to the point where I had a very narrow palate. That's why I have all this hardware in my mouth, because I actually got my palate expanded. Now finally I have room to put my teeth back where they need to go. So, but it's definitely, you can definitely change that stuff, but I'm just trying to work your hypothesis in. I don't.
So you can't.
Jiu-jitsu specifically. It might be people that are. It also could be people that are usually longer into training, or also that whole confounding thing that they're also more likely to have some physical attributes.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't seen a study.
I'm going to say I win this one for right now. And I will wait.
Because he can't disprove you.
Yeah. I put it out there.
I can't.
It's called the scientific method.
Well, the fact that you said you won is completely against the scientific method.
I didn't say I won. I just said I won for now. You got another question?
Man, you're writing this Saturday roll all the way up into our podcast. Are you?
I'm going to write it till the next time I roll with you, which will be in a month, because I'm not going to roll with you.
No, that was my only thing.
I'm gonna take off for like 7 to 10 days, get super recovered, and then I'm gonna grab you. I'm gonna walk in and do a bill. I'm not even gonna come to class. I'm gonna go right into round.
I'm not gonna show up. So we got a question from someone that says, "How do I best use my time when I need to take a break from jiu-jitsu?" Now, I don't know if that's like to continue to get better in jiu-jitsu or
recovery, or what are we talking about?
Well, there's a second part, which is when I'm injured, or when life pulls them away, vacations, life events, newborn child, something like that. I'm assuming this has to do with, we can answer for jiu-jitsu and just health. So when someone's injured.
Yep.
And we kind of went over this in the mobility podcast.
Yeah, we did. And I actually took advantage of that for that 8 weeks I was injured. Not only did I rehab my injury, but I made it a point then to focus on something that would improve not only my performance, but also prevent injury in the future. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to take this time to not only rehab my injury, but make myself more bulletproof. Yeah. So if you have, like, let's say you have some kind of mobility issue, that's a perfect time, because you don't have to go to the gym to do that. Mm-hmm. Work it when you have 10, 15 minutes at home while you're off the mats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You pick something that you want to get a hole in your physical game, so to speak.
I would say absolutely. And then to add to that, if you are still interested in jiu-jitsu and you want to continue to get better, is don't just leave the hobby until you come back. Mm-hmm. And this goes for both, whether you're injured and you got to take some time off or life events, is continue to watch jiu-jitsu. Whether it's competitions or whatever, still be plugged in some way, mm-hmm. Just to keep your mind on the sport, so you can get mental reps, and it'll actually do more than you think.
It absolutely does. There's motor learning that can take place from visualization too.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool thing to get into. Have you ever done that? I'm sure you have. Mm. Going through, like, when I'm learning something new that I want to incorporate, I'll sit there almost like a meditative thing, breathing, and then kind of picture as much detail as I possibly can mm-hmm. in that position and going through the steps and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think it helps a lot.
Big time. And then also for the injury side, still go to class. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to, if you're hurt, be like, I can't really do much. You can probably do more than you think, number one. Number two, even if you can't, maintaining the discipline of the schedule.
Yep.
It's the thing that gets people to fall away from their goals in jiu-jitsu, whether it's to be a black belt or a purple belt or whatever your goal is. That falling away from it due to habits and something coming up, and then out of nowhere, we got a guy, he trained 15 years ago, got mm-hmm. his blue belt, and he was obsessed. He was absolutely obsessed. He was training twice a day as much as he can. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens in life, and then now he's back. He took 10 years off. Mm-hmm. And he was almost to a purple belt back then, mm-hmm. But 10, 12 years off, and now he's just coming back. Mm-hmm. And he's got 2 kids and stuff like that. Obviously, he could be a black belt by now, mm-hmm. even if he was going once a week.
Right.
So he could still maintain those goals.
It's a good point, and it helped me keep my sanity when I was injured, and I felt connected, because the academy is more than just your training. I mean, to me, it's a family, and it just helps my mental state too. So if you remember when I got injured last summer, 2 days later, I had this crazy little brace, and I was hobbling around the mats, and Andrew was cool enough to say, hey, maybe, help me watch the mats, and, mm-hmm. Go by, and I was, helping some of the lower belts, and then eventually got into some drilling, and then Andrew was going to do some drilling with me. I mean, you know what I mean?
For sure.
It keeps you engaged.
Yeah. I had a knee thing like a bit ago, and it was, you can't do a whole lot with a knee injury.
No, you can't.
But like I could be Olivia's partner, mm-hmm. And then I could still kind of be there and take in the drills, and you're still going to get something from it.
Absolutely.
From a relaxation standpoint.
I think that is such a good point. I saw a couple of there's another one of our blue belts I know was injured for a bit, and I saw him in almost every class. Even he was sitting in a chair just watching.
Yeah. And if there's life events that pull you away, so just the schedule is just really difficult, mm-hmm. like I said, don't just leave the hobby you enjoy completely. Like mm-hmm. when you're at home, just go on YouTube and look at best matches ever.
Yeah, totally.
Or the most recent world championships, or something like that.
It's great advice.
Whatever you end up finding, like mm-hmm. that you dig, and maybe you don't know because you don't watch much yet.
Right.
So, then there's some other questions on here we're going to do a black belt series.
We are.
Which is we're going to have different black belts on and talk to them about their journey, what got them into it.
advice they can give, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And so this person has a couple questions that they think would be cool to hear from them.
I'd like to hear that.
But I think we could probably answer one or two in here.
Oh, since you're basically a 3-stripe brown belt.
I'm only a little bit ahead of you, but I mean,
we're the same rank.
22 days. 22.
Okay.
Feels good on my lips.
I know it does. You know what, though? I'm happy for you, Bill, that you feel good about yourself.
I feel like you put X-Lax in my bang.
Put something in there. Sorry.
Even okay. So, do you have a most memorable role or competition match?
I do.
What is it?
When I was a blue belt, I got choked unconscious right from standing because I was kind of basically like many of us do, and I still do to an extent, get that kind of tunnel vision. When we started on our feet, someone had set the opponent was pretty tricky. He set up a baseball grip, just dropped from standing to his back. And I didn't even respect that. And I came on knee on belly and was just going to crush him. All of a sudden, I'd pass out on top of him.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, hey, I thought I was supposed to be at a jiu-jitsu thing competing. And I woke up on the mat.
Yeah.
Ended up, but what was important about that, first of all, baseball bat chokes. As soon as that grip gets sunk in, I know it right away. And secondly, it was a little bit of resilience because I was able then I went ahead and continued to compete and actually won my next match. So it was kind of instead of being like, oh, I'm embarrassed, because the ref said I was out in about 10 seconds on top of that guy. So they had to roll me off of him. But then I just kind of picked myself up and then ended up winning the next match by submission. And that was a really memorable one because I felt like, it would have been easy just to been like, I'm done, and be really embarrassed by it. So that was kind of for me, that was kind of cool in competition.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of roles, I guess. Like there could be like the first time I ever submitted Dan. I did name drop him right there.
Well, you're in trouble now.
I am. He's going to put a pace on me. Because Dan is one of the hardest people.
I would agree.
To get a submission.
Oh, my gosh. Crazy hard.
And I've told this story before where it happened to be a time where that was his last class for like 2 months. Like I think he got a new job. He just graduated.
Right.
And started his new job.
Was he a black belt at that time?
No, he's only been.
He's a brown belt. So.
Yeah, since he got his black belt, he's only been to like a handful of classes because of schedule.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, still brown belt. And then I don't even know if maybe I'd gotten close like twice, but I ended up getting them.
And you stood up immediately and screamed, yes, right?
That's what you did? My gi pounded my chest, and I yelled Pohada.
Okay. That's something, I know Bill didn't do that, but never do that.
Yeah. Never did. You can't, okay. A little bugaboo.
Okay, here we go.
If you are, even at world championships.
Yes.
That like the worlds, the big stage, and you finish your match, and obviously when you submitted them or something like that, you can't, you're a blue belt, you're a purple belt. I don't think you should do it at any time. I think it looks dumb, but especially if you're white, blue, purple, even brown, you can't rip open your gi and yell, I'm the best MFer. You are the best in this little sector called blue belt.
Yep.
Half the stadium could kill you.
Well, to your point, did you see when Mika Galval won?
Yeah.
How reserved he was?
Yeah.
Youngest ever.
Oh, Mika. Yeah. Super.
Like respectful, didn't do that whole thing. And it's just like, man.
Same with Rotolo when he was
totally, right?
Marigali.
That to me is a lot more impressive.
Yeah.
Right. When you're like, obviously they're happy, right? But they're still respectful and they're still like, kind of taking in the moment.
Yeah.
And,
I totally get like putting your life's work towards something and then accomplishing it.
Yeah.
I've done that. I understand it. Putting all your efforts into something.
Would this be acceptable? Could you do like the Napoleon Dynamite and go, yes,
I'll allow it.
Okay.
I mean, there's part of something about the now I'm not okay. The act like you've been there before. I think there is something to that. I think that could be beneficial. But at the same time, I do still like I do like emotion. I think it is cool, but it's when they're just ripping open the can.
Yeah.
This is my house.
Yeah.
Jeez. Sorry.
It's a little much. I agree. And it's same thing celebrating if you tap out an upper belt in your gym.
Yeah, like I'm about to do. So I catch him.
Okay.
And he looks up to me and he just smiles. He's like, nice. And just grins. Nice.
You're in big trouble at that point.
Round ends. I don't see him for 2 months because he just started a new job. And he walks in. I'm like, oh, Dan, what's up? I just seen him. He walked in the gym. I seen him for 30 seconds. And he goes, I didn't forget about it. I was like, what? Now, when I said what, I knew.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah, because I bought a birthday cake that day.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I bought a little G.I. Joe. I put an arm on it because it was an arm bar. And I was like, this is my life. And so I acted like I didn't notice. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you got me last time. I remember. 2 months.
Well, Dan has that wrestler mentality too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how'd that work out for you?
I threw up.
Okay.
He cardio tapped me.
I was going to say.
It was
after 2 months of not being there. It's insane. I know.
It was gross.
Yeah.
So
he beats me up too.
That was, thank you, Dan. That was memorable for me. This person also threw in for the black belts their favorite submission that they got on Chris and Bill.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I know who that person is, actually.
Yeah. Biggest injury and how you rehabbed it. I assume it might be your.
Oh my! I went through that big time. My adductor, my tear. Yeah, it's probably the worst one I've had. I've had some broken toes, but those aren't the same.
Yeah, mine's a mix between. I had like some very minor tearing on the inside of the knee there. I don't know if that's that
MCL.
Yeah. Yeah, that rib that got out of place.
In that other one, which is the rib that displaced.
Yeah.
Those two were the rib in the moment felt the worst because someone had my back and their heel, my rib cage naturally kind of like as it gets towards the bottom, it kind of starts coming like flaring.
Yeah, you're deformed. I know. It's okay. It's okay.
And
you're the elephant man. It's
yes.
Yeah, it's good.
And his heel happened to like almost make it under my rib.
Oh,
like
yes.
And so when I went belly down, he was curling his heel, and it felt like when you pull Velcro apart slowly. That's what my rib felt like. It was like, and I don't know if you were there. I think just Carrie was.
Was Carrie there?
Thank goodness, because she reset it right there. It took like half an hour, but she
what happens with that is you get an intercostal muscle spasm, right? And it's not that the rib is out, or though with trauma it can. The muscle pulls the vertebrae because the ribs are attached to the thoracic vertebrae, and you get a rotation, then you can have what looks like an elevation. People say the rib is out. It's not in its normal.
That's why she kept saying, I think displaced was the like.
Yeah, it's displaced. It's not dislocated. Yeah. Right, exactly. And what she probably did is work on that whole side hold position where she goes top and bottom and cups it.
She had all four of her fingers under my ribs.
Yep.
which was kind of horrific.
Yeah.
Because I'm breathing like this.
Well, because that's where the diaphragm is like that's what she was doing, is help mobilizing that whole thing. Yep. And so, well, I'm glad she was there.
Yeah. I was like the dude on Terminator 2, Dyson.
Yep.
When he's got the thing.
Yeah. Oh.
I can't hold it much longer.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah.
I was going to die.
Yep.
And then she's holding my ribs and my soul.
Yeah. It feels like that. I think that's one of the worst injuries to have in jiu-jitsu, I think, is a rib.
And everyone's going to get it. Everyone's going to get it.
You know,
it's the same as motorcycle. I just had this conversation with Dave Stegman. Just like a motorcycle riding. You either gone down or you're going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Same with a rib and jiu-jitsu. Oh. You're going to get a little boo-boo on the old ribbies.
Well, you know, I remember like last time, I can't remember how long ago it was, you had me in a freaking body triangle from my back. And the thing I kept thinking is like, yeah, well, I'm not going to do some crazy twisty thing because that's exactly how it happens. Yeah. People try to just do something super athletic out of that, and there you go.
Yeah. I introduced my body triangle to a new purple belt that just started coming in. Made me feel super good. He told me it's the tightest thing he's ever felt.
I could have gone so many directions with that.
What are you talking about?
Nothing, man.
What are you talking about, perv?
Hey, I'm husband of Carrie. Give me a break.
That's true.
What do you want me to do?
I don't know.
I mean, you say something like that, it's like a beach ball coming across the plate. I got to hit it. So the body triangle is no fun.
Yeah. So that's it. He's got other ones, but I figure we'll just kind of.
Yeah. What I like the most about that, which I know exactly who that is.
You just saw it, didn't you?
No, I didn't, but I can just tell.
Okay.
Especially he named you and I, and for a black belt to tell what's their favorite submission on me.
An A?
Yeah.
No, it does not. It starts with a J.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good foot fetish. Well, I think that. Any other questions, Liv?
No.
Yeah.
Good.
I think that's it.
Wow. Okay.
Leave a review if you can on Spotify or iTunes. Comments on the algo for YouTube.
I'm gonna try my best to listen to Professor Andrea's wishes. She requested a certain black belt we have on for our first one, which I think that's kicking it off with a bang.
Yeah, we will get...
He's a super, super shy person.
Yeah.
Very, very soft-spoken.
We'll have to pull some stories out of him. But I think it'll be very entertaining. No filters.
No, and definitely not working family safe. Not that any of these necessarily are, but definitely not that one.
As he'd say, they're going to hear it somewhere. So you might as well just... We are getting canceled, and it will be our last episode.
That's okay, though. I will start hooking that up, see if he can come on.
Good.
So.
Good.
Yep.
Oh, and any questions for Kyle Hiller? If we have him back on.
Oh, yeah. That was by the way, that was a really popular one.
Yeah, a lot of people have commented on that one, and we've had some follow-up questions. So if you have any questions for someone that works in law enforcement, especially as a training officer, we want to have them on again. And we can talk a little bit more in depth about anything, really. So,
yep,
that'd be cool.
I like it.
Okay, thanks all.
Later.
Pump it up.